So a lot of commentators have done video reviews of this particular Kyle Rittenhouse coverage by a show called The Real, which many people are referring to as like a cheap version of The View. And so I'm not going to go over the whole thing. It's riddled with just obvious, complete lack of understanding of the case. But there's one issue in particular that I think really sheds light on what is really going on here. Why do they want him to be guilty? Why do they need him to be guilty? Why do they continue to delude themselves that he's guilty? Let's take a look.
Yeah, it's a lot of updates happening. For me, I think that it's about the ideology, and that's what we should be concerned with as a country. Because if this child gets off, which it looks like because of the things that's happening that he will probably get off, it really does hurt us with protests.
So what we as a country should be concerned about is the ideology. His ideology and the ideology of the rioters in question. She's going to go on to mention them as peaceful protesters, which is obvious cognitive dissonance. There's no way anybody who looked at Kenosha at all would really consider it to be a peaceful protest. But the fact that she is trying to make it about the ideologies in question kind of, in my opinion, if you strip away the layers, is really what's at stake here. This is why they need him to be guilty, because they consider this measuring his ideology or the ideology that they perceive to be the right against the ideology of the left, and in particular, how that ideology manifests when it comes to quote-unquote protests.
What we want in this country and what we are allowed are peaceful protests.
Yes.
That's what we want.
It's our right.
If you don't agree with everything, fine. Let's have a protest. Let's have a peaceful protest. But
Hey! Hey! No! Sir! Are you okay? Are you okay?
He's gonna be okay. Want some more water?
Are you okay? Are you sure?
But we need to punish people that think that they can cross state lines.
Right, like well over 100 rioters.
Have an AR-15 and shoot people. That is the bottom line for me.
So the bottom line for her, just as with many people on the left in this issue, is that nobody who holds her ideology, because remember, she said that we need to focus on the ideology, should in any way be inhibited from protesting. And she said peaceful protest, but that's been part of the problem with the memory hole of what happened in 2020, which is why I made the documentary Insurrection, Hindsight is Always 2020, specifically to address this issue, that for some reason the only riot in the memory of anybody is January 6th, and everything that happened before it was just peaceful protests.
That I don't care if he's talking about self-defense. Your intent was to come. When you have an AR-15, you know how dangerous that
At 17
AR-15
years old.
Yeah, an AR-15, kind of like this AR-15 brought by BLM/Antifa protesters. There's actually two of them in this clip. You see Rambo here squaring up with the door of the Bearcat, hoping that cops will come out so that he can shoot at them.
Gas us! Gas! You're fucking cowards!
And about a moment later, he's also going to be leveling up his AR-15 and taking some shots at the Bearcat as it's moving away. Now again, other commentators have already done a lot about the other gross inaccuracies in this video, but I really think that point about how it should be about the ideology is really perhaps the most honest and simple assessment of the way that people feel about this. They think it's an ideological war, and that therefore Kyle Rittenhouse should be guilty by virtue of his ideology.
My opinion, it's not that it's a race issue there, quote unquote, but people are actually, I think it's a bigger issue of how he's being treated.
Yes,
He's
it really
being
is
treated
exactly.
based on his
But
race.
it's about politics and ideology.
Yeah.
And if you just, like I said, scrape it down to the bare basics, it's about the fact that we should be able to peacefully protest. If this guy gets off, which it looks like it is, then people will go around shooting people in the streets, and that is my fear.
No.
So remember, it's about the ideology and the politics of the situation. That should be the issue when it comes to determining the guilt or innocence of Kyle Rittenhouse. Because if she was, again, defending the idea of peaceful protests in Kenosha, she obviously either does not know or is just actively putting it out of her mind. The same way that the over 600 riots in 2020 were put out of everyone's minds. It just doesn't exist because it doesn't fit the narrative. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important to her and to the rest of the ignorant women on this panel. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they don't want to. They have their version of it, and that's what they're sticking to. Because that's the one that makes them feel good, to feel like they are the good guys, fighting and standing up against the evil. So, again, it all comes down to this. They want Kyle to be guilty, they need Kyle to be guilty for ideological and political reasons alone. Thanks for listening. And just some final words, guys, an announcement that I'll be on PaulyFrog's show on Odysee tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I will provide a link in the description. Also, I've been playing around with my sound settings and applying some filters, so do me a favor and give me some feedback on how I sounded in this broadcast. I will still sound a little weird because I just came down with a cold. In any case, I hope to see you guys over on Pauly's stream and Odysee. Thanks again for listening. Consider supporting me on Patreon, Subscribestar, or PayPal, and visit me at v-radio.us, where you can join my Discord, Telegram, Facebook, and other social media to actually be aware when I do put out new content, because YouTube has not been in any way reliable in this regard. Thanks again.